Good evening and welcome to another episode of Hatching for Health with your host, Jessica Hatch. We are here today to talk about a very rare condition that does have a cure, thankfully. It is known as vesicourethral reflux. So this is something that affects the bladder and it is diagnosed in very young children but can be up into their teens. But we're going to talk specific with a little girl who had this and now has been cured. So welcome to the show, Brooklyn.
Hi. Oh, thanks for having us. We're glad to be here.
And Sofia, you guys are just adorable. It's like a little mini you, isn't she?
I know. Say hello. Can you say hi?
Hi.
Oh,
So
she's
cute.
being a little shy.
So I'm really blessed that you were able to come on. I know that you guys have, from the diagnosis through, finding the right doctor to, really take care of her in the proper manner. I know there's different surgical options that you've spoken to me about.
Right.
But I kind of just want to know from the inside of whenever she was diagnosed, I know that you and your husband are, strong Christians, have a, wonderful family background.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's always hard to hear the news that something is wrong with your little boy or girl. So kind of tell me about that moment for you guys.
Yeah, so that was difficult. That happened right at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. So we were all already in kind of a weird state.
Yeah.
And so when they told us that, her case was bad enough that it was going to require surgery to fix it, we were upset. I mean, it was scary. We were really fortunate that it's not a chronic illness that there's not a cure for, obviously. But, anytime you have to think about your child having surgery and especially a major surgery, it's very scary for us.
Of course. And so the name of it, I know most people, go by VUR. And it was something I'd never heard of. I mean, from the stats, it shows 1 to 2% of children are even diagnosed with it. So it is extremely rare. So for her, what were these initial symptoms that you knew something was wrong? What was it?
Yeah, so initially when our youngest son was 6 weeks old, she started limping. And so a big symptom of kids with VUR is flank pain. And so that can actually cause them to limp.
Really?
And so she started limping. And of course, our immediate thought was something was wrong musculoskeletally because she was limping and having a hard time, it seemed like, walking. So we went to several orthopedics for that. Hey, one moment. It's okay.
So at this point, you're going, not knowing, of course, what it is. Let's see pediatric doctors. Let's see what's going on. She must have some sort of hip condition.
Something going on,
Yeah.
right. So we did some imaging for her. We saw 2 different pediatric orthos, and then we actually ended up seeing just a family friend ortho, and everything was fine. I mean, structurally she looked fine, so we didn't know exactly what was going on. Yeah.
And good for you guys for, being on top of that. I think a lot of these diagnoses that children go through are I don't want to say caught too late, but because of them not, taking initiative to go and try and find the right doctors, it creates many more problems down the road and it affects their life altogether. So I think that's one thing. And I always try and be a big advocate of that with the show and not educate, but congratulate parents for taking that step, and doing things to figure it out and not saying, oh, she's so young, this can't be anything, because that was so important to actually start figuring out what it was at that age,
Right.
So you went through a few doctors, chiropractic, orthopedic. They're all looking at the skeletal system, like you said, nothing's problem. You did x-rays?
We did a couple series of x-rays. We did blood work. Everything really seemed fine, For anything that was major that could have been wrong, it seemed like she was checking all the boxes. She was okay. But around that same time, she got her first urinary tract infection. And at the time, we were with a different pediatrician. And I wasn't really aware. I think I shared with you, I wasn't aware that that's not a very common thing to happen with a child that's still in diapers. And so I think what went wrong there, and not to discredit that pediatrician, but I think it should have kind of flagged to her that something's not right here.
Yeah. At that age, a UTI, it's
not common.
There's something else that should be highlighted or looked into. And I think, so at that point, like, what did you guys do? Did you say, let's look at another pediatric doctor?
That's actually exactly what we did. So we changed pediatricians at that time, and we were connected with our current pediatrician, who's Dr. McKillop. She was with Texas Children's, and now she's with Kelsey Siebold. And I remember seeing her for the first time and kind of explained to her what was going on and how she would kind of limp on and off. And even though everything seemed to be fine structurally, I felt, my husband and I both felt that something was just not right.
Okay.
And she assured me that we would do whatever it took really to kind of figure out what was going on. And so
I bet that was very reassuring to hear that from, you know, going from like no one having any answers to, you know, like just basically feeling almost lost as to what was going on. Yeah. To going like, we'll get to the bottom of this, you know?
It was super
like,
reassuring.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. And so she was really instrumental in actually learning about her diagnosis and then getting us in front of the right people to treat her.
Okay. And I know that I read a little bit about, I mean, this is something they're born with, and it can't even be hereditary, but it's, most of them are born with anyway. It did say that sometimes it can come about, like, you know, based on different bladder infections outside of having been born with it. But with her, it seems like it was something that, you know, at birth it was there, and it was just at the right time it was going to come up to where you had to, you know, fix the issue. Yeah. So she guided you to see a pediatric urologist?
Correct, yeah. So she sent us over to a group with Texas Children's also. And so we saw a pediatric urology surgeon to start. And so what happened?
What is it? Did the cartoon end? Oh, let's start that over. There we go.
We're getting into dinner time and getting a little cranky in the evenings. They call this the witching hour. Other parents will probably understand that concept. But no, so we started seeing a pediatric urology group, and so they ordered a cystogram. It was a voiding cystogram, which is what actually gave us the diagnosis.
Oh, that's interesting. I do remember, voiding cystogram, where there's like an x-ray of the urinary tract.
Yeah, and so they insert a catheter and they're able to essentially fill the bladder up and watch what happens when the bladder's full. And so at that point, they were able to see the urine refluxing back into the kidney.
So because you're a little more educated on this, kind of talk to me / the viewers on, you know, what normally happens. I mean, I know a lot of this is common sense, but just from like the bladder standpoint, connecting to the kidneys and like kind of what happens in someone that has VUR.
Yeah, so the thing with VUR is essentially the ureters are not during the time when they're in the womb. And a lot of these cases are actually caught when children are in the womb. So before they're even born, they can catch it on ultrasound. But anyways, what happens is the ureter does not implant far enough into the bladder. So how your renal system works, and this is to my understanding, is your ureters are supposed to implant far enough into your bladder that it essentially shuts off that backflow. If that makes sense. And so children that have VUR, their ureters are not implanted far enough into their bladder in order for their bladder to effectively close that connection when it's full. And so even
meaning it then goes back up to the kidneys.
Correct.
Causing these different infections, which, I mean, does that lead to kidney damage for somebody? Yeah,
so I mean, if this is not caught early, it can certainly damage kidneys, and in more severe cases, again, that are not caught until later in life, you know, children have to go on dialysis and sometimes even get a kidney transplant.
That, I mean, when I think of, you know, dialysis or kidney transplants, I mean, I solely go to adults, you know, just mentally you're like, okay, people have done things like improperly, you know, through their health or, you know, way of living, diet and exercise wise, you know, but to think of a child, you know, with no control of that even happening to go onto dialysis, I mean, that's, you know, very scary. And again, this goes back to the early detection. I mean, who would want, you know, their little boy or girl to have to go to dialysis all because of something they were genetically born with that could have been fixed?
Right, exactly. So that early detection is so important. It's coming. We don't do a lot of screen time, and so when she does get it, I feel like she's very demanding. Hey, listen, let's settle down.
Is it freezing on you?
Yeah. Mama's low on data.
So you did this test, and you know, they went in and they're going, okay, this is going to help us diagnose it, and not even knowing it was going to be VUR. So at that point, she in fact, I guess, failed that test to
Correct.
to lead to that.
So when they did that test, it basically showed that it was refluxing back into the kidneys. The urine was refluxing. And they grade that on a scale of 1 to 5. And so for her, on her right side, she was a grade 5. And on her left
the
side,
highest grade. Okay.
And on her left side, she was a grade 4 to 5.
So it's like, we've got to take action.
Exactly.
So were you and when you're and your husband, I guess, together at this doctor's appointment? I know with COVID going on, was this just yourself there with the doctor when they're telling you this?
So it was just me. Because of COVID, can't be there together.
And you went there knowing that, I mean, you're wanting answers.
Right.
So you're going there going, okay, you know, I don't want her to fail this test, but like that could be my answer. So
Correct.
I guess when they came out and, you know, kind of probably had to explain that this is what grade 5 means, this is what grade 4 and 5 means. Can you kind of take me back to that moment and kind of how you were feeling? Sorry.
No, I mean, I've been really emotional with you about it too, because leading up to
I know
her
I've
surgery.
spoken to you about it, and I just, you know, it's just important for others to kind of connect with that feeling, because if they can, they'll take things more serious for their child, and so I want them to do that. And but yeah, so I'm taking myself back, and I wasn't even there, but just kind of to get to that moment again.
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult to experience that, I will say, alone, and then obviously, you know, playing telephone between a doctor and your spouse is tough. I would not want my husband having to tell me everything that the doctors are saying. You know, I would want to be able to be there. And so that was really hard on all of us.
And that was strictly because of COVID, not because of his work. It was like only one of you can be here during this test.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct. And it was a traumatic, the voiding cystogram is traumatic for a young child. When you have to catheterize a baby, I mean, she's not even 3. And so, you know, it's tough. I mean, it's really tough.
Of course. We do have to take a commercial break, but obviously we come back, I want to learn, you know, what were the solutions. And so we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with you. How would you like to see your commercial on the Hatching for Health episode each and every Tuesday evening? If that's you, please email me at info@hatchingforhealth.org, and we can tell you about all the fabulous ways to see your commercial on our episodes. And don't forget, we're a 501c, so any contribution is 100% tax deductible. We look forward to hearing from you. I love being able to use this repair moisturizer. It even includes retinol. And the last cool product I love to finish with is the Glow Serum. When I'm sore after a tough workout, the Muscle and Joint Body Cream by Cool CBD gives me all the relief I need. Welcome back to this episode of Hatching for Health. We're talking VUR, known as vesicourethral reflux, and we're getting pretty deep into the details. We're currently at a point where we're learning what the options are once you are diagnosed at a high enough grade to where you've got to take a next step. So welcome back to the show. Here we are. So talking about the grades. So you're saying 1 through 5 is the grade of VUR that there is. My understanding, you can actually outgrow this. Like,
correct.
So with some children, they have a low enough grade that, thankfully they just get to outgrow it. With her, that wasn't an option. You needed to take the next step. So, at this point you're talking surgeons.
Yeah, so essentially the only option, what happens with VUR, the condition itself is not always a terrible thing, but when it causes symptoms like the urinary tract and kidney infections, that's when it becomes an issue, because those are the things that cause the damage to the renal system. So the first option that they have available is to keep your child on an antibiotic, because she was actually having recurrent infections. And so they want to keep your child on an antibiotic for a very long time, like several years actually, waiting for them to outgrow it. And then they do repeat of those voiding cystograms to see if it's gotten better. And so
that was an option given to you guys.
That was an option. It did not come very highly recommended. What are you doing, silly? It did not come very highly recommended because we did not think that she would outgrow it. Hey, please don't touch that.
You want to say your name into her mic?
You want to say
you want to say your Sofia? Beautiful name into her mic?
¿Cómo te llamas?
Is it Sofia?
Okay, she's feeling a little shy, but I think we're going to do better without the phone. So they did not necessarily recommend that. They said there was a very low percentage chance for her to outgrow it.
Okay.
And so, we said, okay, so what's the next option? And so we knew that open surgery was an option. It's a procedure that's been around for a really long time, has about a 99% success rate, but it's a pretty intense procedure. So they do a bikini cut all the way across. So it's a pretty big incision. And then they actually also cut open the bladder, and that is a baby oso, very good. And they in just a moment. And they take the ureter from the inside of the bladder and reimplant it that way. But the recovery for that is pretty intense.
So both of them, because I guess there's the both, right? So they actually go in and try and insert it the way that it should have been developed properly. Okay. But it's like, they're just completely opening up a little boy or girl's stomach, bladder. There's got to be, the recovery.
It's intense.
Would be very difficult, yeah.
So we had a surgeon that we had actually scheduled that procedure with. And as we got closer and closer to it, it just really didn't feel right to us, and we wanted to explore other options. I work in healthcare, and I know that, oftentimes if you don't do a procedure, you don't always have great things to say. You aren't always as informed about that other procedures available to you.
Yeah.
And so we ended up getting a second opinion, and we were referred by that doctor to Dr. Chester Coe, is who actually ended up doing her procedure. And he actually is a world leader in pediatric urology surgery.
Are you leaving us? Oh no.
Uh-oh. So Dr. Chester Coe is a world-renowned pediatric urology surgeon, and so we were referred to him. And he actually does the procedures at Texas Children's downtown. And they have the Da Vinci robot there, so they can actually do the surgery by just making 4 very small incisions laparoscopically. So there's one in the belly button, one kind of on the lower abdomen, one over here to the right of the belly button.
So a lot less invasive. We're talking,
much less.
Yes. And what's the success rate for that? Is it
that's 94%.
Okay.
So right about the same, but we were okay kind of losing a little bit of that success percentage and gaining some better recovery time.
Exactly. I can imagine. So you canceled a surgery that was on the books to have the bigger surgery which would have opened up the abdomen area, and kind of canceled that, went to this new doctor, learned about this option, and then decided, okay, let's get on the surgery schedule. We need to fix this.
Right.
And so when was this surgery? It's very recent.
So it was really recent. She had it done. It's been about 12 weeks now. And she had a hard time recovering, honestly. She came home with a catheter, which was a little tough. And even she was with a catheter for about a month, and then even at that point still struggled to void urine on her own.
They normally leave with a catheter, and how long is it in before you get to have it removed?
So what happens is most children don't actually normally, that is in Australia, very good. They don't normally leave with a catheter. But something that happens in primarily younger children when they have this surgery is this lazy bladder syndrome.
Okay.
And so basically what happens, because you've aggravated the nerves of the bladder, it kind of goes to sleep on you.
Okay.
And so sometimes kids have to have a catheter for a day or two, usually just when they're in the hospital.
Yeah.
But she really struggled to void even after
to kind of urinate on her own.
Day.
So they were like, let's just, she's ready to go home, but let's just keep the catheter in, and kind of see how she's able to urinate on her own through that.
Correct.
Or I guess not on her own, because that's allowing her
it's just a constant drain.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. So from that point, because I know things didn't go perfectly well. The surgery itself did. Thankfully, no complications. But I know that there were some issues with, I guess with that. But finally,
she's in a good place.
She's in a good place.
Yeah, and we're super grateful. She's a super resilient kiddo.
I bet. Because I just remember, leading up to that surgery date, how nerve-wracking it was for you and your husband, and COVID. Like you said, you both couldn't be there in the surgery with her. You both, couldn't be in recovery with her. It was, literally taking turns.
Yeah, that was probably the hardest thing for us. And they don't make it easy at the hospital either. I love Texas Children's, and I know that they're also doing their very best to try to make sure everybody's safe. But there were a lot of things that it just was very difficult to, just in this COVID world that we found ourselves in.
Of course. These are, some of uncertain times for everyone, but when it's dealing with your child, it's like the last thing you want to have is any kind of uncertainty, or, especially when you have that partner that can be there and not be able to.
Right.
So I know, again, those are just things that are not irrelevant, but they're related to what we're going through with this pandemic. So not to be helped, but thankfully she is healed and a blessed little girl.
Oh, God bless you.
Bless you. And I think that it is just a kind of a blessing that, you were able to come on and tell this story, because
absolutely,
sure enough, that 1% to 2%, someone could hear this and realize some of these symptoms going on. This might be VUR. Let's go get checked out. I know that, it sounds like that pediatric doctor was like a really, big part. And so I'll probably want to list, what was her name again?
Her name is Dr. McKillop.
Okay.
And so she now practices out of Kelsey-Seybold in the Woodlands.
Okay.
Absolutely fabulous. Even before she referred us to the urology group, she actually ordered a renal ultrasound for us, and that came back totally normal.
Okay.
I don't know if I had a chance to mention that earlier. So everything looked fine.
Yeah.
It was tricky to diagnose for sure.
Of course.
A seashell.
So, she just seems like she is definitely like on the ball, and someone that you can really, you can really count on to be an advocate for your child. Like, like they should be. So, I think it just, referencing her is important for others if they're kind of on the hunt for someone, or maybe she can be, a guidance for them as it relates to specialists. With other parents that maybe they've just learned that their child, I say uniquely because it is so rare, were diagnosed. Like, do you have any advice that you could give them, husband, wife, advice that you could maybe lend them?
Yeah, just go with your gut, right? Most often, and our pediatrician actually told me this, Dr. McKillop, she said, most often your mom gut or your dad gut is right. And if you have a doctor or a pediatrician that says, everything's fine, and you truly believe that something's going on, go with your gut and get a second opinion.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to really advocate for your child, because nobody else is going to do it.
Yeah. And to the extent that, mom or dad will. So,
yeah, exactly.
You guys are always the most important ones to to ensure that they're going to be okay and that things are going to get done and done right. So I think that's a great bit of advice. And
thank you.
Yeah, and I know I wish Pablo could have been here as well.
I know.
You know, he's obviously y'all just have such a beautiful family with your little boy, and I know that this can be hereditary, so
correct.
You'll get him checked naturally just to make sure that he's in the clear. So it's important too for others, if their child is diagnosed, you just have to check your children as you continue to have them. But great having you guys. We're wrapping things up, and thank you, Sophia. Can you wave to the camera?
Can you say bye-bye?
Remember where the camera is?
Bye-bye. Can you look over at the
Can
camera?
we see your beautiful
bye-bye?
little eyes? Thank you again for being here and educating us on this viscourethral reflux. Quite a name, and I'm glad to know what it is now. So thank you for educating us, and thank you to God that she is healed. So thanks for tuning in, and we will look forward to seeing you next week on the Hatching for Health show.